JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. June 10th, 2024. Pre-market rant. Really quick here. Talk about some of the names I'm looking at, some of the names I'm in, and the Fed, CPI. We still have earnings this week, and apologize for the little beep noise. I'm trying to get that down. Let's see if I can do that. And go from there. Just 1 second. There we go. All right, so really quick S&P up over 1% last week. Six of the past 7 weeks to the upside, and coming into an important week. There's not much in the way of earnings. Earnings are winding down. There's still Adobe, Broadcom. There's a few other names. I think there's like 60 names reporting, but the big eyeballs will be on the Fed on Wednesday. We also have CPI data at 8:30 Wednesday morning. So tough to. I mean, the Fed, and if they did a rate hike or a rate cut, I think would cause some crazy volatility in markets, probably to the downside. So it's pretty much 100% expectation, no rate cut, no rate hike. And then it's, they talk about the dot plot. Where does the Fed look like they're going to start cutting the rates? And it looks like they're going to taper it down from 3 to 2. And I guess expectations are moving into September for the first rate cut. So I think as long as Powell's able to spin that and the dot plot looks good, and that's kind of like the expectation, I think the markets can kind of chop around here. If not, certainly there's some opportunity. We saw a little weakness last week, uh, right at the upper Bollinger Band, 536 and change. Seemed like we found some resistance. So maybe just a little pull, a little chop, and then we can start looking for the new highs, 540, 545 on a SPY. The other, I guess, I talk about silver linings, but one of the other concerns I have is the small caps, and they just keep floundering here. They were down 1% on Friday. Multi-month lows, right near the lows at the start of May. And now you start looking, are they going to start leading the markets to the downside? And some of the reason the markets have done so well is because of this lack of participation. You only have a couple names doing really well, with obviously Nvidia leading the charge. So things I have in the back of my head, I'm not going to, I'm just going to be a little cautious until we find some support. So that's kind of the story there. But definitely watching small caps over the next day or two, and they're actually down again under that 200. The IWM's under 200 this morning. So some of the names I've been trading, and of course HPQ I posted last week around this bull flag setting up after its earnings. It closed up 4 sessions in a row to end the week, and slow and steady. It's not the most volatile name. It doesn't it doesn't trade up 2, 3, 4% one day and down 2% the next day. It's slow and steady. I think it heads up near $40 and beyond. So continue to like my calls there. I'm not going to add anything more on that. And then on the flip side, here's Dell. Dell disappointing, finally under that 130 handle, under that lower support line that I had drawn on the watch list. Still love the story, but unfortunately, it doesn't care what I think. The market's the only thing that matters, right? So see if you can find some footing. Apple has their developer conference today, WWDC. If it's supposedly it's gonna be its biggest, most anticipated or most important developer conference in a decade. I think I saw some headlines this morning. The big theme is going to be around AI, right? So that they have to figure out, back when they were just a hardware company, Apple, they were just making the phones, and then the next tailwind was the App Store, getting some way to monetize that consumer base. So now they did that. Now it's, how do we get to be able to get the next leg, which would be AI. So some people always thought it was a car, it was a TV. There's always been these things that come out that people think is the next big thing, but certainly is going to be important to hear that spin. And then the other important part on Apple, and I'm not I don't have the slide up here, but is their partnerships, and they'll announce some names that they'll get some moves in the market hours during the WWDC, which starts, it's 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern time. So definitely something to be aware of. So that's Dell. Uh, Turns almost up 3 sessions in a row. Finally closed over the $7 handle for multiple sessions, which is a good sign. I think once it starts to really break out over that 8 handle, I think it's blue skies. And $10, if not higher. Always have the folks who don't know the story, then they start looking and say, wow, this is a great under the radar GLP-1 name. Locked some of my June and July strikes in, added other strikes as well. I'll continue to look for opportunities to lock profits there. Adobe reports earnings Thursday after the close. The stock actually had a great week last week. It was trading in the 440s, closed at 458 and change. They have earnings after close Thursday. Their last earnings back in the middle of March, it had already sold off from $700, and then there was some disappointing comments, a little weak guidance, and the stock tumbled all the way under $500, and it really hasn't found its footing ever since. Besides, I mean, this is the biggest. Well, they had a 4-session rally to start May, but if I'm looking for an opportunity to play earnings this week, I may look to get Adobe calls at the start of the week, hope for some premium build. The 50-day moving average is right at 477. If you can get through that, maybe gets to 490, 500 before Thursday. I put it on the watch list. I think there's two key spots like 515 and then that 540 handle. And I think if it gets into earnings and it posts a beat and raise Thursday after the close, it could be right back at 540. And again, it has that big backdrop of AI and NVIDIA. NVIDIA mentioned Adobe quite a few times on their GTC conference. So that partnership and that area is not going away. If anything, it's getting stronger. And then Align Technology. So Align had an analyst note this morning. Evercore ISI Group, they maintained an outperform rating, but dropped the price target to 300 from 370. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's folks just adjusting their targets when they get a chance. Last week was a downgrade by OTR. I guess that was some of the pressure, but at some point, the buyback is going to kick in for a line. It's just going to melt to the upside. I talked about adding more strikes. I'll wait for now, but once it starts showing a breakout, let's see if I have the chart. It seems like I mean, this kind of looks like a bottom, right? So once it gets over that 260 handle and closes above that, I think it's off to the races. So really like that story. URI, I don't know why I don't have that on the watch, but added some of those strikes last week. JP Morgan upgraded the stock. Another name that sold off on strong earnings seems to have found a bottom. I think that has a tailwind of the $2 trillion infrastructure bill that was passed 2.5 years ago. I think some of these names are just starting to bear fruit. The infrastructure bill is starting to bear fruit for some of these names. URI is front and center. STRL. There's other infrastructure names that certainly are benefiting from that bill. So that's that. URI, Dell. Trying to think of some of the other names. The GameStop saga is tough to even follow now. I tried to watch some of that Roaring Kitty YouTube thing. In the first 10 minutes, I was like, what's going on here? So uh, also it's tough. The company comes out with another offering. They release their earnings early. I think they have an investor day on June 13th. So some of it's kind of tough to weigh in there. For me, and I said it last week too, it's like a proxy for sticking it to the man, right? That's kind of what it's trading right now. You have folks trying to investigate Roaring Kitty for posting his position, but pretty much what does every hedge fund have to do every quarter, right? They have to post their positions. And when you see Warren Buffett coming out with a larger stake in Apple, or some of these other funds that are well followed that have a huge stake in some of these other even unknown names, those names rally the next day. And how is it any different than Warren Kitty posting his position? Like, he can't do that without they think he's colluding or whatever. If people want to buy positions he's in, that's up to them, right? So, I mean, there's a fine line. I'm not, some Hoop Danger posted it, and Asphalt Cowboy also posted a link about that person who had a huge position in GameStop. They were up, $250,000, and then they just watched it just go back to zero. Well, the profits go back to zero. They didn't lose much, if any, money. I think they had a stop in, but nobody's forcing you to push that button, right? That's the rant, folks. We have about 37 minutes to the open. I'll be back on audio later. Let's have a great week. Hopefully Wednesday is gonna be a exciting one, and then go from there. Rock and roll.